Lie number 75. You need your church or your pastor to be your spiritual covering. Now, this is a lie that's taught in many churches. Perhaps you are not familiar with it, or maybe you hear it often. But I find increasingly as I travel and speak in different places that this whole teaching about a spiritual covering seems to be very prevalent in the modern church. And typically it is a teaching which suggests that if you don't submit to the authority of your church or sometimes even your local church pastor, then somehow you're in rebellion and you take yourself out from under the protective umbrella that God has put over you. There is nothing in the New Testament that teaches any such thing. The Bible teaches that pastors are to be servant leaders, and the church is a fellowship of Christians who've come together to worship the Lord Jesus Christ. This idea of a spiritual covering being necessary to protect us from the devil or the world, that is not true. It is not biblical. If there is a such thing as a spiritual covering, you are covered or protected by the life of the indwelling Christ who is in you. Sometimes people ask me, they'll say, well, who is your spiritual covering? And I'll always say, well, Jesus Christ is my spiritual covering. And I realize that when they ask that question and I answer that way, sometimes they think I'm proud or I'm independent or I'm outside the safety, the protection of a pastor or a local church congregation. Of course, Melanie and I love the local church. We believe in God's church and in the local church in particular. But I don't believe the Bible teaches at all that somehow if you do not submit to the leadership of a church or to a local congregation, that you're outside of the protective hand of God, the umbrella, if you will. Jesus Christ is your covering, and the idea that you need your church or your pastor to be a spiritual covering over you, the simple truth of the matter is 99% of the time when that is taught, I believe it is a manipulative way that those in leadership seek to control those under their direction. And so be careful when you hear that teaching, because your spiritual covering is Jesus Christ. I'm not indicating or suggesting at all that you need to have an arrogant, haughty, or rebellious attitude. I hope you love your pastor enough that you respect what he says and you would listen very carefully to his advice. But that's what it is, advice. I hope you love the congregation where you worship enough that you value what they say and what they think. I hope that is the case, but the idea that somehow you are inferior to or subservient or submissive to one who stands over you, that is not true. We all stand on equal ground at the foot of the cross, and your covering is Jesus Christ. That is a truth that will set you free in your grace walk.